Alright, and welcome back to Zero Cool Gaming, and today we're going to be doing a review of a game called Defiance.
Maybe that's not the right word.
Alright, now, what is Defiance about?
I sort of expected you to be a bowl of soup.
Well, it's one of those games that I
What are
bought
you doing?
because I had watched the
Whoa, are you okay?
TV series on
Need help?
Sci-Fi,
Can you hear me?
and I was just
Here,
out
sit
shopping
down
one
before
day
you
and I
pass
saw
out.
it on the shelf and I
I'm sure you
picked
took
it
more
up.
than a
Didn't
bump
pay
to
it
the
too
head,
much
so rest.
mind. I
Get your
didn't
feet
read
under
the
you.
box like I
I'm
should
gonna go see
have.
if anyone else needs help.
And there
Oh,
was actually a
you
CD
might
in
want
it,
to
which was
arm
nice.
yourself a bit more. The locals
I
aren't
do
known
like
for their
physical
chivalry.
media. But
Hello. Oh, good. You can hear me now.
the game itself required you to be online. It was an online
I'm the
experience.
environmental guardian online device.
And it's by Tryon,
You can
so
just call me Ego.
it's a monetized experience in
Please
truth.
forgive me. I'm having some trouble getting all the behaviors activated, so
But
you might have to wait a
I
few
bought
minutes.
the game, and
Don't
obviously
worry
I
about it.
bought it
We have lots to go over, so
probably a
certainly
year or two after it had come out.
blur out the rest of the
Maybe it
history.
wasn't that long. Maybe it was only a year after it came out. I don't know. I'm not for sure as for exactly when I purchased this. But,
Use an ego power for me to integrate.
and I went online and I played the game, and most of the game was a single player experience. There were aspects of it that required a group of people to get together to take on certain parts of the game, but the main storyline in that respect,
Is the best power for surprising yourself.
regardless of the fact that you do have to do the multiplayer parts of this game as well,
I'm receiving a
the
signal.
main storyline is, for the most part, single player. So I found that to be pretty common among these type of games, especially with Tryon. I mean, I'm sure that there's more multiplayer aspects if you really get into it, but I was never
First time I've ever seen one in
truly
action.
interested in the multiplayer part of the game in the first
We're
part,
gonna make one hell
or
of
in
a
the
team.
first place.
A little
I
bit of
just
dough
wanted
will
to
take you a
see
long
the
way to get to
story
this place.
that
I'm
this
headed to the
game was
crash
going
site,
to
but
present
you're
to
gonna
me.
need help.
And what I
Sure
learned
thing,
over the
Ark.
few months that I played it
Ark Hunter.
is that it would probably take me a year or longer to actually get through the storyline because of all of the, what I would call, padding that's put in the game to prevent you from progressing through it. And a lot of that is done deliberately to make you pay for the different
From a couple nearby
aspects, if you want to call it that, of this game
one of them belongs to Mr. Von Bach.
that allow you to
My systems have reached a point
advance
where upgrades have become available. He
through
knows
the
better than me.
storyline. Now, doing the different raid events with multiple people can alleviate some of that because you'll get higher, um, you'll get better weaponry, better armor,
Says this is not Mr. Von Bach,
um,
but maybe I
better
understand
items,
what
things
I'm
like this. and then you can apply those, assuming that you can apply them, and progress through the story more. Now, in truth, I maybe played this game for 20, 30 hours, which is quite a bit, truly. But because I was also coming into this game a few years after it started, the player base was in truth kind of limited. You had very few low level characters like myself, and several people who had seemingly already finished the entire storyline and were just playing around at this point. And some of them would do this, some of them would do that. Sometimes they would help, sometimes they would be a hindrance, that sort of thing. Or they'd draw you into a fight that they knew would kill you, that sort of stuff. But regardless, I mean, the whole reason that I got this game is because I enjoyed the story that was happening in the show. And I wanted to see what kind of story they would present in this game. And I got this game long before I really started to research games before I purchased them. I was still kind of in the naive phase of not realizing truly what was happening to the gaming industry. But I knew I didn't like this type of interface with games that you had to be online to play. And I've had games like Star Ocean Online. I believe that's what it's called, Star Ocean Online. And I got 1 and 2. Both of these are single player experience. There is a multiplayer part to it, which apparently is much larger, but the single player aspect of the game was the only part that I wanted to engage with, period. And even to engage with the single player experience, which was absolutely single player, there was no multiplayer aspect to it, I had to be online to play the game. I had to be connected to their server the whole time. And I thought that was just insane. And I hated it. And I still hate it. I don't think I'll ever get to the point that I'm going to enjoy that. In fact, today I've gotten to the point that whenever I see something like that, I just ignore it and refuse to purchase or play the game at all. Because I know what that really means. You don't own the product. It can be changed and altered and turned off and banned or whatever at any point in time, and you have no control over that. I want something that I own. I want something that I can put into my computer, turn it on, load it up, authorize it if I have to, because that's been a thing for forever, and in truth, there should be another way to do that. But if all I got to do is authorize it and get a clearance that yes, this is a valid CD key, I can deal with that. And that's as far as I go, truly, because I've gone further, obviously, and I don't like it. I don't like how it feels. I don't like the aspects of it, and I don't like what we've seen them do at this point as a result of it, which is make games completely unplayable or unplayable. And this is one of those games that you cannot play today as a direct result of them shutting down the servers for it. So you buy a game and you get to play it for several years, but we shut down the servers, so can't play it anymore. Too bad for you. You should have read the fine print. You don't actually own anything. We're just giving you the opportunity to enjoy it because you paid the entrance fee, essentially. And I don't like that. I don't think that's how gaming should be. And until people truly start to reject this current desire of game makers to make everything permanently online. Um, that's what they're going to do because they have more control over it, and you have none. Period. At any point, they can take all of your games away from you. That's truly what they want. Then you got to make up a new account. You got to get, a different internet provider. Uh, Create a new identity for yourself, basically, and then repurchase all of your games because you were banned because maybe you said bad things online. Not even on their platform, just wherever. Um, that's a dystopian nightmare, people. Truly. And I don't want to live in that world where companies have such control over people. And they can take away thousands of dollars of what I would consider an investment just because they feel like it. Just because they don't like you. Just because they decide that you, for whatever reason, are undeserving of the things that you bought. That's not a world I want to live in. That's not a world I want to make a reality. And as long as people continue to purchase these type of games in mass like they are, that's the world we're going to be forced to live in. Which means I won't be able to play games because I'm not going to buy into a system that I know is corrupt and built on what I consider to be quite evil principles. I know what kind of people run these companies. And these people truly hate people like me. There's no way that they'd allow me to stay on their platforms, even if I never said anything, just because of the things that I've said on other platforms. That's not a world that I want to live in, people. That's not a reality that I want to create. Neither do I think it's one that anyone should want to create. We should have the ability to go out and purchase what we enjoy without being told we're guilty of some thought crime. Therefore, we don't get to keep what we purchased. Alright, so what's the gameplay like in this game? Well, essentially, this is a third-person action-adventure game. And in truth, it has a lot in common with other games. So when I explain some parts of this, it will be in terms of another game that I've played a lot more of, rather than necessarily in terms of this game. So the story starts out, you're a arc hunter. You've had a AI system embedded in your brain, and it will help you to unlock new skills and things of that effect throughout the game. Now, I don't know if this game was trying to say that it was an RPG or anything like that, because while though it does have RPG elements to it, I mean, you do level up, you do level up your gear, your things to this effect. You get better ammo, I believe. Better weapons, better armor. I wouldn't say that this is an RPG. That would be kind of like calling Titanfall an RPG. And it's really not. While though when you start the game, there are certain aspects of it literally locked out, and you have to unlock some of the weapons, you've got to unlock some of the secondary weapons, you've got to unlock different types of grenades, you've got to unlock all your different skills. This game does pretty much the same thing. It starts out with a pretty basic build, and then you unlock more parts of it as you go through it. one of the more interesting things is the different types of powers that you get in this game, which are speed boost, damage boost, cloak, and the ability to create a clone of yourself. Now, when I played this game, and like I said, I only played it for like 30 hours. One of the abilities that I used the most was the cloak ability. It was very effective in combat because the enemies didn't have object permanence, which means once you left their line of sight, they didn't know where you were. They're just like, huh, he disappeared. Isn't that weird? So it made it easy to get in behind them and shoot them from behind and kill them quicker, things like that. So that was one of the abilities that I used all the time. But the story is basically about you being a arc hunter, where you go through and you try to collect different arc tech or alien technology from different crash sites and such around the planet. Your particular mission is to collect particular arc tech that will rebuild a terraforming device for the scientist so that he can re-terraform the planet back to the way it was. Not that I think that's possible, but regardless, that's kind of the story arc of this game. And that's really all there is to the story arc of this game. I mean, that's all of it in a nutshell. But I would like to talk about some of the different abilities. Now, the speed boost does have its advantages. One of them being is that with this game in particular, it allows you to basically dodge bullets. And that's very similar to what Titanfall would do with its speed boost, and it called that speed boost STEM. It's very hard to track, as a normal human being, it's very hard to track a player who is using a stim pack in Titanfall because of how quickly they're moving. So essentially, you could dodge bullets because the person shooting at you wouldn't be able to keep up with your movements as fast as you were making them. Damage boost in Defiance is just that. It would give you a damage boost or a higher rate of critical hits, which is a damage boost. And then you had the cloak ability, which is, like I said, the one that I used a lot, but it was basically, in this game, like I said, it was because the enemies didn't understand object permanence. Once you disappeared from their field of range, even if you cloaked right in front of them, they would just lose track of you. Unless you stood still, because they would still fire in the area that you were. As long as you weren't standing still, they wouldn't know where you went. In Titanfall, I used cloak a little more with a little more a little more understanding of the ability itself. In Titanfall, other players could still tell that there was a pilot moving around, even if they were cloaked. But the Titans themselves wouldn't be able to see anything. And the game was designed that way deliberately. So if there were a few enemy Titans on the field, and I just recently died in a match, I would reload as what I called my Titan Killer build, which would be the cloaked pilot with the LMG that was specifically loaded with the Titan rounds. There were rounds specifically designed for shooting into the Titan's head to take its health down faster. and I would use the upgraded stealth package so that they wouldn't hear me jumping on top of them when I jumped on top of them. And they wouldn't even know I was there until I pulled off the hatch to the head of the Titan. And usually with this game, what they would do is they would pop smoke. It was an electrified smoke field. So if you just stayed on top of the Titan, you'd die. And when you jump off a Titan, you jump off the Titan in a backwards motion. In other words, away from the Titan's back. And, decent players would know that you were jumping in that direction. So as soon as you got off of them because they popped their smoke, they would turn around in an effort to kill you. So the first thing that I would do when I went to jump off is I would throw 2 satchels right at the feet of the Titan. And then I would try to turn a corner as quickly as possible and hope that I survived before the Titan killed me. But regardless, I'd throw the satchels right at its feet. And as soon as the Titan moved just a little bit forward, I'd blow those satchels. And as long as it was a Atlas or a Strider Titan, at the very least, I would either outright destroy it at that point, or it would be in the warning zone, which means it's going to blow up at some point, a few seconds later. Unless it was an Ogre Titan, and then I would have to repeat that process twice to bring it to that same point. But regardless, that's how that build worked, and I used it for that specific purpose because it could outright destroy 2 out of 3 Titans, essentially. I mean, one of them would live for a little while, but the other one would just be collapsed right then and there. And then you have the clone ability. Now, I never used clone in this game, except for the missions that specifically told you to do it and how to use it and when and where, that sort of thing. And there were missions in Defiance that did exactly that. There were like tutorials for the clone ability. But in Titanfall, the way that I would use them is if I was having to run from the enemy as a pilot, because they were, usually it would be because teams were working together, and a lot of times you get like a team against a bunch of randos, and you'd usually end up in a one-sided battle. But regardless, I like to use the clone ability when I would end up in those type of battles, one-sided, that you're going to lose, usually regardless of what you did, just because the other team was actually talking between each other and coordinating their efforts, that sort of thing. But I liked it when I would run down a hallway to try to get away from them. I'd turn the corner and I'd throw a satchel up onto the ceiling. And then, I'd pass a hallway as I'm going down the hallway that I'm in. And just as I passed that hallway, I'd throw another satchel onto the ceiling. And then when I got to the end of the hallway, I would turn the corner, I'd throw the clone, and then I would run into the wall and continue running into the wall. Because the clone, to anyone who was looking at it, it would look like me running down the hallway. As soon as I would hear gunfire, meaning that they were shooting at the clone hologram, I would blow the satchels. And in most cases, I would kill 1 to 2 pilots. Just to give you an idea of how these type of tactics are used and can be used. I never really had that much playtime with this particular game and those abilities, but I had thousands of hours of playtime with Titanfall and how to use these different abilities and what works, what doesn't work, that sort of thing. So
You're the second best archer.
that was one of the things that I actually kind of liked about this game was the different skills that it gave you for your different loadouts and how you could build your particular player in this game, and you could change it at any time you wanted. I mean, it didn't matter. So that was pretty cool. And then of course, you run around the field and you take on different quests, and there's a lot of different quests, and you've got to take on a lot of them to level up enough to move on through the storyline of this game. And then you have what this game what this game considers side quests, which are your kind of like your dungeon events where you would have a raid party where you have a whole bunch of people going after a particular set of points, and as you progress from point to point to point, the enemies that you face get increasingly harder and harder until you face the final boss of that raid, which is the most powerful, and they summon the most powerful minions into the area, that sort of thing. But engaging in these raids would grant you usually the more rare items, the more rare armor, and this sort of thing, which was kind of nice. I thought that was an interesting way of doing it, but I didn't like the fact that the only way you could play this game was with a constant online connection. Especially when you consider the fact that, at least 75% of the game was single player. Truly. Not that other people couldn't help you with your quests. They certainly could help you progress through the story quests. But it wasn't necessary. Truly. You could always just go grind in the area just before whatever quest it is that you can't complete. Get a couple of levels. It may take you a couple of hours, don't get me wrong. And then go through the quest level. And, or the actual level quest, what I'm saying, story progression quest. And you'd be able to complete it. So, yeah, there's quite a bit to this game, truly. There was probably 150 hours of gameplay in this game to complete it. And I did really like the storyline of the show. Not that I remember a whole lot about it today, I just remember that this guy ran into this alien chick, helped her out, and then they ended up traveling together to this city to try to make a life, And then they ended up getting into a whole bunch of different conflicts and this, that, and the other, and investigating things. I remember there was an investigation into a woman that got pushed off the arch. That had been the arch had been converted into a radio station, and some woman was murdered by being pushed off the top of it. And they were trying to frame this one guy for it who wasn't guilty, and there's a bunch of things that happened on with that. And then this same guy ended up falling in love with a human girl, and that wasn't allowed, and blah, blah, blah. And at the time, me being the naive human being that I was, I didn't understand, and this is truly how my thinking was. I was like, we voted to allow different ethnicities to marry and things like that a long time ago. And while I do realize that there were places in the world that actually have laws against such things, I didn't see how a show on sci-fi was going to change that in those countries in any way, shape, or form. And what I really didn't understand about it is that that's not what was actually going on. I mean, now that I look back upon it with different eyes, I can see that this was the message.
Looks like they were dragged away alive.
And it's the message that the left have been putting out for a long time. They like to pretend that things like civil rights and women's rights and the rights of different ethnicities to marry each other and love one another, these sorts of laws were never created. And they like to pretend that that's what this country is, even though it absolutely is not. And they like to pretend that even though we have laws that say that there's nothing wrong with these things, that apparently in their eyes, everyone in this country acts as if there still is. And that's just a blatant lie. But this is how that is portrayed in the entertainment that they've been putting out for years. Now, today, it's much more upfront and in your face about it. Exactly what it is they expect you to think and believe and how you should act and blah, 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 which is why I don't watch any of it. But that back then, they tried to tone it down a little bit, I guess is the way of putting it, to where someone like myself wouldn't even realize it for what it is. And, yeah, found that quite troubling. But there were a couple other parts of the show that I remember. I remember a part where this dude had cut his arm off to prove his loyalty. That was pretty twisted. But, in that type of situation, you got to go that far. I remember a little bit about the situation. It was basically life or death. And I remember the end of the show itself, where the dude takes a ship filled with vampires to another planet. And, yeah. I mean, there's not a whole lot of the show that I remember, but I didn't hate the show. It just wasn't the best show. There were a few memorable parts within it, but the vast majority of it I just kind of blurs together in my memory.
That was incredible. Keep it up. We got them all. The Earth Republic personnel are safe and sound.
But anyway, that's my rant for the day. I hope that you enjoy the rest of yours. If you could hit the like, subscribe, rumble, follow buttons, all of that does help. And I will talk to you later.